I always thought I knew who I was. A son. Her son. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 28, living a quiet life in Portland, Oregon. I work as a freelance photographer, mostly weddings and portraits. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. My mother, Deborah Miller, passed away 4 months ago from a sudden stroke. She was only 59. The grief, it didn't hit me all at once. It crept in slowly, like fog rolling into a valley, wrapping around everything I believed to be true. We weren't a perfect family. Just me and her. She raised me alone. She never talked about my father. I always assumed he left before I was born, and out of respect, I never pushed. She was my world, soft-spoken, gentle, always humming while folding laundry or cooking something from scratch. She gave me a childhood filled with love, even when money was tight. She never remarried. Never dated, at least not that I knew of. Just, her and me. After the funeral, I stayed in her house. I couldn't leave. Every corner still smelled like her jasmine perfume. The old ticking clock in the living room still echoed like a heartbeat. I thought staying there would bring me peace. Instead, it brought me something else entirely. One rainy evening, I decided to clear out the attic. Dusty boxes, old photo albums, Christmas decorations from years ago. But tucked behind a box of tangled lights, I found it. A small, leather-bound book. Worn. Cracked at the spine. A faded golden clasp barely held it shut. It was her handwriting on the first page. Deborah and Miller, private, do not read. I hesitated. It felt wrong. Violating her trust, even in death. But something in me, call it curiosity, call it instinct, knew this wasn't just a diary. It was a map to something she never told me. I sat cross-legged on the dusty attic floor and opened it. The early pages were innocent enough. Notes from her 20s. Musings on books, sketches of future dreams, heartbreaks. I smiled. It felt like meeting the younger version of the woman I loved. But then, things shifted. An entry from late 1996 caught my attention. It's been 3 days since they brought him to me. I've held him, rocked him, fed him. But every time I look into his eyes, I see her. Her decision. Not mine. I don't know if I can do this. Wait. Who is him? Who is her? I quickly flipped ahead. My heart started racing. Another entry, March 1997. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had said no. If I had walked away instead of agreeing to take him. But what choice did I have? She begged me. And now, he calls me Mom. He doesn't know. He can't ever know. My fingers trembled. The him she referred to, was it me? No. That couldn't be. But then I remembered something, my birth certificate. I'd seen it once, years ago. It had no father's name. I never thought twice. My chest felt tight. I flipped faster, desperate. Entry after entry blurred together, memories, regrets, confessions. He asked me today about his father. I lied. Again. He deserves the truth, but how could I ever explain what happened back then? I'm not even sure who his real parents are. Only what she told me. That word again. She. Who was she? And then I read it. The line that changed everything: I promised Mary the first would never tell Ethan he was adopted. That it would die with us. But if he ever finds this diary, I hope he forgives me. I dropped the book. My ears rang. My breath caught in my throat. Adopted? I wasn't her son. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. The woman who raised me, the only parent I'd ever known, wasn't my biological mother. And now, she was gone. I couldn't ask her why. I couldn't demand the truth. But one thing I knew for sure: I had to find out who Mary was. The sun filtered weakly through the faded curtains of my childhood bedroom. I hadn't planned on staying here overnight, but after finding the diary and reading its contents, my legs refused to leave. It was as if the house had a heartbeat of its own now, one I didn't recognize. The woman I had called Mom for 28 years, Deborah, was out grocery shopping when I stumbled upon her secret. She didn't know I'd read the diary. Not yet. And I had no idea how to tell her that I knew. I hadn't even called her Deborah aloud yet. Just thinking it made my chest tighten. I read the line again: I promised Mary I'd never tell Ethan he was adopted. But some nights, the guilt eats me alive. I look at him and see her. Who was Mary? My real mother? Why had she given me away? And why had Deborah never told me the truth? I scrolled through my phone, checking Deborah's Facebook page. She'd always been private, but maybe I missed something: an old friend tagged, a comment buried deep. I found one photo from 1994, Deborah holding a newborn. The caption read, "He's home." Blue heart. The post had exactly one comment: she would have been proud. My heart stopped. For Mary. Suddenly, a wave of guilt hit me. I had always been close to Deborah. She raised me with unwavering care: school plays, scraped knees, late-night phone calls through college. How do you reconcile 28 years of love with one line of betrayal? I remembered the times I asked about my birth, just out of curiosity, and she would brush it off gently: "You were born early. I held you in my arms the moment you arrived." It wasn't a lie, technically. But it wasn't the truth either. I pulled the diary closer and flipped to the next page. It was dated 2 months later. Mary never came back after she handed him to me. I think something happened to her. But I promised I'd protect him. Even if it meant erasing her. I slammed the diary shut, pulse racing. Erasing her? My mind spiraled with questions. Had Deborah known something bad happened to Mary? Why didn't she call the police, or did she? I had to find out more. Later that evening, Deborah returned. I watched her from the hallway as she unpacked groceries. Her hands trembled just slightly, something I'd never noticed before. She still looked like the woman who sang lullabies to me when I had nightmares, but now she also looked like someone hiding 1,000 secrets behind gentle eyes. I wanted to confront her. I should have. But something in me held back. Instead, I asked softly, "Hey. Did you ever know someone named Mary?" She froze. A carton of milk slipped from her hand and burst open on the floor. Her face went pale. Where did you hear that name?" I lied. I saw an old Facebook comment. Someone said. She would have been proud. Deborah didn't answer right away. She sat down, slowly, her hands gripping the edge of the kitchen chair like she might fall. She was a friend, she said at last. A very close one. We lost touch a long time ago. Her voice cracked. I stared at her. A friend who gave you a baby. But I didn't push. Not yet. I wanted her to tell me, choose to tell me. That night, I lay awake, haunted by thoughts of a woman I had never met. What was she like? Did she love me? Did she miss me? Was she still alive? And what kind of pain had Deborah carried for so long, hiding this truth? The next morning, I woke with a strange tightness in my chest. Sleep hadn't brought peace, only more questions. The image of the diary, Deborah's haunted face, and the mystery of Mary all swirled in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that Deborah had only told me part of the truth. So I made a decision. I drove to the county records office. I didn't even know what I was looking for exactly. My birth certificate. Something that confirmed or contradicted the life I thought I'd lived. After nearly an hour and a half of polite digging and awkward stares from the clerk, I found it. Birth certificate, Ethan James Cole. Mother, Mary Elizabeth Langford. Father, unknown. Langford. I'd never heard that name before. I scribbled it on a notepad and asked the clerk if there were any other public records under Mary Langford. She raised an eyebrow but printed a list. One record stood out. A missing persons report. Filed May 1996. Filed, 2 months after I was born. My breath caught. The file was thin, barely a page. Mary Elizabeth Langford. Age 23. Last seen handing over her newborn child to a friend, Deborah Cole, citing temporary custody due to mental and emotional stress. Never seen or heard from again. That line haunted me. Deborah had said Mary disappeared. But this wasn't just a disappearance. She'd handed me over, and then vanished. That night, back at the house, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I walked into the living room, diary in one hand, the birth certificate in the other. Deborah sat on the couch, knitting a scarf like nothing was wrong. I placed the papers gently on the table in front of her. I know everything. She didn't speak. Just stared at the name, Mary Elizabeth Langford. I found the missing person report. You told the police she gave me to you temporarily. But she never came back. You knew that. You've always known. Deborah's hands trembled in her lap. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. She was my best friend, she said. We were inseparable in college. But Mary, she struggled. Depression. Anxiety. She wasn't stable. When she found out she was pregnant, the father was long gone. She came to me in the middle of the night, holding you in her arms. She was crying, shaking. She said she couldn't do it. That if she stayed, she'd ruin your life. My chest burned. I told her I'd keep you safe. Just for a little while. Until she got better. But weeks passed. Then months. I tried to find her, but there was nothing. Her phone was disconnected. Her apartment was empty. No family. No trace. I stood still. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me just wanted to cry. She was gone, Ethan. And I was the only one left. I raised you the best I could. I gave up everything so you'd never feel abandoned. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't tell you because I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. That you'd leave too. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I don't hate you, I whispered. But I needed answers. More than she could give. Later that week, I tracked down a genealogy researcher. Through online ancestry sites and DNA databases, we submitted a request to trace Mary's lineage. I was desperate now, not just to learn who she was, but to find out what happened to her. And then something unexpected happened. The researcher emailed me a possible match, a half-brother. Name, Lucas Langford. Age, 32. Lives 2 states over. I stared at the screen. I wasn't an only child. And he had no idea I existed. I sat in the parking lot of a small diner 2 states away, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The name Lucas Langford burned on the back of my mind like a brand I didn't ask for, but couldn't ignore. We'd exchanged one awkward message through the Ancestry platform after the DNA match came in. I'd told him I had reason to believe we were brothers. He didn't reply for 3 days. Then yesterday, a one-line message came in, "If you want to talk, I work mornings at Ray's Diner in Fairview." And now I was here. My heart felt like it might rip out of my chest. I wasn't sure what I even wanted from him. Answers. A connection. Closure. I stepped into the diner. It smelled like old coffee and syrup. The booths were mostly empty, save for a couple of truckers in the back. Behind the counter stood a man in his early 30s, dark blonde hair, tired blue eyes, and a tall frame that felt oddly familiar. He looked at me, paused, and then walked over. "You Ethan?" he asked. I nodded. He motioned to a booth in the corner and poured us both a cup of coffee before sitting across from me. For a moment, we said nothing. The silence was too loud. Finally, he spoke. "You said you're my brother." "I think I am," I said, pulling the copy of the birth certificate from my bag. "My mother was Mary Langford." Lucas flinched at the name. His eyes welled, but he blinked it back hard. "She was my mom too," he said quietly. "She disappeared when I was 7. I was told she abandoned me. My dad raised me. Bitter. Drunk. Always said she was weak and selfish." He looked down, voice breaking. "But I remember her. She loved me. She never would have left like that." I felt like I couldn't breathe. I showed him the diary. Pages marked by faded ink, Mary's thoughts, her heartbreak, her fear. "She gave me to Deborah, a friend," I said. "She thought she'd ruin my life if she kept me. But no one ever saw her again." Lucas was silent for a long time, reading. When he reached the last page, he stared out the window like he was seeing ghosts. "I looked for her once," he whispered. "Hired someone. But the trail went cold." I nodded. "Me too." He looked at me, searching my face. "So you're saying she gave you up, and then just disappeared?" "Exactly." Lucas leaned back, stunned. "And no one ever found her? No body? No trace?" "No," I said. "Nothing. It's like she vanished off the face of the earth." He looked angry now. Not at me, at the silence, the lies, the years of missing pieces. Then he said something that froze the blood in my veins. "My dad remarried 6 months after she vanished. He burned all her things. Said she didn't deserve to be remembered. He paused. But he never filed for divorce. Never went to the police. A pit formed in my stomach. What are you saying? I asked slowly. Lucas looked at me, eyes hard. I think my dad knew more than he ever said. And I think he may have had something to do with her disappearance. We stared at each other in a heavy silence that said everything words couldn't. I suddenly realized this wasn't just about identity anymore. It was about truth. Justice. And maybe, uncovering something far darker than we ever expected. Lucas stood up and tossed a towel behind the counter. I get off in 30 minutes. After that, we go to the house. He still lives there. He looked at me with fire in his voice. If he did something to her, we're going to find out. I nodded. For the first time since I'd found that diary, I wasn't alone. Mark stared at me for several seconds, the hose still running, water soaking into the dead grass. Then, without a word, he dropped it and walked toward the house. Lucas and I exchanged a look. I wanted to turn around, but something told me to follow. Inside, the house was dim and dusty, with a faint smell of old wood and tobacco. Mark sat at the kitchen table and motioned for us to sit. His face was unreadable. Cold. Almost resigned. You found the diary, he said without looking at me. I froze. You knew. He gave a dry chuckle, more like an exhale. I wrote it. Parts of it, anyway. Lucas blinked. What the hell are you talking about? Mark finally turned to me. That diary was meant for you to find. Someday. But not like this. Everything in the room seemed to shift. You wrote in my mom's diary. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. She wasn't your mom. She raised you. She loved you. But Mary was never your biological mother. I nodded, already knowing that much. Then who was? He hesitated, then pulled open an old drawer beside the table. From it, he handed me a yellowing envelope. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman. She looked just like me. Brown eyes. Same nose. Same half-smile. On the back, in smudged ink, Sophie, 1989. You will find him when he's ready. I looked up. Who is Sophie? Mark stared out the window. She was your real mother. My daughter. My brain stopped. What? Lucas pushed his chair back. Dad, you had another daughter. She was only 16. Got pregnant. I forced her to give the baby away. The room began to tilt. You're saying I'm your grandson? Mark nodded. Mary agreed to take you in. Raise you as her own. Sophie, she ran away. She couldn't stay and watch. She died in a car accident 2 years later. Lucas covered his mouth, stunned. I felt like the floor had been ripped from beneath me. All these years, the woman I called Mom was my aunt by marriage. And the man sitting across from me, this grizzled, emotionless old man, was actually my grandfather. And the worst part? He'd known the whole time. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Mark shrugged. You had a stable life. Mary gave you love. What difference would it make? It makes every difference, I snapped. You let me live a lie. Lucas stood, pacing. Jesus, Dad. You're unbelievable. Mark's voice rose. It wasn't my decision alone. Mary wanted to protect him. And Sophie, she begged me to make sure her baby had a real chance. I did what I thought was right. Silence fell again. I pulled out the diary. So the parts about Mary breaking down, were those from her or you? Both, Mark admitted. She started it. I added after she passed. I closed the book slowly. I'm not angry that I'm adopted. I'm angry that nobody trusted me with the truth. Mark's eyes softened slightly. You deserved better. I just didn't know how to give it. Lucas sat back down. What now? The question hung heavy in the air. What now? Now that I knew my entire identity had been pieced together by secrets, sacrifices, and shame. I looked at Mark again. This man who'd hidden the truth, who had lost both his daughters, one to death, one to silence, and who now sat across from the living embodiment of all his regrets. I don't know what's next, I said quietly. But I want to know more. About her. About everything. Mark nodded. I'll tell you what I remember. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. Something real. The silence after that confrontation stretched into days. Lucas and I left Mark's house and didn't speak for the entire drive. Back at my apartment, I tried to eat, tried to sleep, but my thoughts were stuck replaying Sophie's letter over and over again in my head. I had a mother. A real one. And she didn't give me up, she was forced to. I sat on the floor of my bedroom with the diary in my lap and the letter spread out in front of me, every word branded into my memory. My whole life had been a lie built by the people who were supposed to protect me. Lucas visited the next morning. His face was pale, eyes rimmed red. He admitted everything, he said. Last night. Mark, he told me the truth about Sophie, about Mary, even about you. I looked up, heart thudding. He said he thought he was saving everyone. That the shame of Sophie's pregnancy would have ruined our family. He convinced Mary to raise you. Threatened Sophie to stay away. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Lucas sat down across from me, running his hand through his hair. He's selling the house. Said he's leaving town. Said he doesn't want to get in your way anymore. It didn't feel like justice. Nothing about this did. But it felt like a beginning. I still don't know who I am, I said quietly. I don't have a real last name. I don't even have a photo of her. Lucas hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, creased photo. Sophie gave this to Mark the night she left, he said. He kept it hidden. I found it tucked in the attic behind one of the bookshelves. I held it with trembling fingers. A girl, barely more than a teenager, smiling in a flower field, with a small pendant necklace around her neck. She had my eyes. She looks kind, I whispered. She was, Lucas said. From what little I remember. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. You know, growing up, I always hated that Mark never let me get close to you. He made it feel like you were a burden, something Mary had taken on that didn't belong to us. But I always saw you as my little brother. I just didn't know how true that really was. I blinked. You mean that? He nodded. Look, maybe we didn't grow up in the best circumstances. But we have each other now. And that means something. A wave of emotion hit me like a tide. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We buried Mary's diary that afternoon. In the park she used to take me to as a child. We stood there, two men piecing together the truth from ruins, and for the first time, I felt something close to peace. As the sun started to set, Lucas reached into his coat again. There's one more thing, he said, pulling out a velvet box. Inside was the same pendant from the photo. The one Sophie wore. I think it's time you had this, he said. I held it like it was made of glass. Something real. Something hers. Something mine. I put it on. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt chosen. The truth had shattered everything I believed about myself. But in those broken pieces, I found something new. Not the boy I thought I was. Not the orphan I feared I'd always be. But a man with a past he now understood. And a future he was ready to build. It's been 6 months since I read that final page in Mary's diary. 6 months since I stood in that park with Lucas and buried the only written truth I'd ever known. And yet, something strange happened after that moment, something I never expected. I started healing. The truth didn't destroy me. It didn't rip my identity apart. It helped me rebuild it. Stronger. Wiser. And finally honest. Lucas and I now meet every Sunday. We talk. Sometimes about Sophie. Sometimes about Mark. Sometimes just about life. He even helped me track down a woman who might have known my birth mother. An old neighbor who remembered Sophie's laughter, her favorite song, and the way she always wore that pendant I now keep close to my heart. I've been writing about her. About Mary. About everything. I didn't start with the idea of publishing anything. But the more I wrote, the more I realized, maybe others out there feel lost like I did. Maybe someone else needs to hear this story. So I started a blog. The Diary in the Attic. Just stories. Memories. Reflections. I didn't expect anyone to read it. But people did. They wrote back. They shared their family secrets, their own versions of truth and lies and forgiveness. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone. As for Mark, he did leave town. I never saw him again. But one day, a small package showed up on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a note. One sentence, "I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing." And a small photo album. Photos of Sophie. Of me as a baby. Even one of Mary holding me, her eyes filled with something between pride and guilt. I cried for a long time after that. Not because I hated him. But because I finally understood just how broken he was too. This whole journey taught me that people don't always make choices from evil, they make them from fear. From shame. From a desperate attempt to protect what little control they think they have. It doesn't make it right. But it makes it human. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a lie. I don't see a mistake. I see a man who survived a truth most people would run from. I see someone who turned pain into purpose. And the biggest lesson? Blood doesn't define family. Love does. Mary, for all her faults, loved me. Lucas, despite everything, chose to stand by me. And Sophie? Even in silence, she never stopped loving me. I carry all three of them with me. In my words. In that pendant. And in the peace I've finally found. So to anyone listening right now, if you're struggling with who you are, if your past feels too heavy, or your story too complicated, just know this, you are not alone. And sometimes, the truth doesn't break you. It sets you free.